When's the last time you really looked at your new hire training to determine if it's really doing its job? Today, we're going to talk with Shelby Betts about that topic and more. So let's just jump in. This is the One Step Better podcast. Helping small businesses make wins each and every week. So Shelby, what is something that you've tried to learn that just did not work out?
Well, Mike, that's a long list of hobbies and expensive habits. Something that I tried to learn that did not work out is music.
Like playing music?
Yeah, I've always wanted to play the guitar, play the drums, ukulele, the banjo, the violin. You know, I've bought instruments, but when I get to the point of actually playing them, it just doesn't ever work out.
So how many instruments have you tried to play?
Oh, man, that's a great question. Truthfully, probably just 2 or 3.
Yeah.
You know, the recorder doesn't count. You know, you have to do that in middle school.
Can you play hot cross buns on the recorder?
Everyone can,
Yeah.
and we should all stop doing that, you know.
No, every time there's a recorder around, somebody should pick it up and play
that.
it.
I think the piano, the guitar, and the drums, all of which, probably parents were like, no more of this. But, yeah, I still have a couple guitars in my house and still think, one day I'm going to learn how to play that, but...
Did you ever
so
do
far,
lessons,
or
was
out.
it?
No, and I think that's the issue. I've
Yeah.
definitely learned by watching someone, and I need to be doing it. And I've never had anyone say, "Oh, here's the chords you should start with."
Yeah.
So I'm sure if I had someone actually teach me, then I might be able to figure it out. But I'm like, this is a whole different language. I don't know what I'm doing.
So this is
This
one of those
hurts my
things.
fingers.
You wanted to learn it, but you didn't really want to put in all of the effort necessary to learn it.
No effort. I just wanted to buy the tool and then be a master, and then I learned that's not how it works.
There's some sci-fi movie that you can go plug your brain into a computer and it just downloads. Oh, it's the Matrix. That's the Matrix, right? They download information into your brain. You just know how to do something.
Yeah, that's what I want.
wish life was like that.
Yeah, can we just create software updates for my brain? I'd love that.
That would be cool.
What about you? What's something you've tried to learn that didn't
Everything in the
work
world.
out?
There's so many things.
What's a good one?
I think of 3 that came up top of mind just really quickly when I saw this question was chickens. I had chickens for a hot minute. That was fun. They're all dead. Got eaten by polar bears. No, my dog ate some. Some ran away. They didn't want to be part of our family anymore. Yeah. The chickens didn't work out.
All the kids were like, got to get out of here.
I've
Chicken
done this.
run.
Yeah, they were like, I'm getting out of here. I did the music thing too. Anna told me that playing a ukulele was easier than learning how to play the guitar.
Oh.
I tried to learn how to play the guitar. That failed. And so I bought a ukulele. I know how to tune it.
I think we have a couple people in office that can play the ukulele.
Yeah. Anna said that next time, that we're doing something to bring it up here, and she'll teach me some things.
Yeah, Tara knows too, I think.
Yeah. To be fair, the tuner is built into the ukulele, so it's hard to screw it up.
Oh, I
but
see.
I do know how to tune it.
Nice.
Chickens,
ukuleles.
language. Like I would love, like you're fluent in
yeah.
Spanish. I would
Claro
love
que
to be
sí.
fluent in Spanish.
Yeah. But see, that's a learn by doing thing. If you
It
get
is.
dropped in a foreign country and you don't know any
You got to figure it out.
language and they don't know any English, then you figure it out.
I have the same problem as you. I want to know how to do all these things, but I
Yes.
don't want to put in the effort to
Yeah.
actually do all of these things.
Yeah, let's be honest. It's the investing the time to master it.
Yeah.
I'm
It's
out.
just, it's like I want the instant quick fix type of thing.
Yes.
And so I think that, the training that kind of goes into the front end to make, me able to play the ukulele is super important. You can't learn a musical instrument just on your own unless you're really, tenacious and inclined to, I'm going to do this, I'm going to go figure it out.
There, sure.
And I think our new hire training is very similar. The reality is if we don't put in time to train our new hires to do their job well, they're going to flounder and fail just like we have floundered and failed with playing instruments or learning how to raise chickens. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. The reality is new hire training is super important. We cannot expect people to walk into our organization, get up and running without some type of external input into that person that says, hey, this is who we are. This is what we expect. This is how you're going to do your job. But there's also a balance of having some flexibility and freedom for that individual. We hired them for a reason. We expect that they're competent and we expect that they're going to match our values, those types of things. And so there's that. I want to show you, I want to give you a little bit of leash for you to figure it out. Mm-hmm. And walking that balance is really difficult. You have, over the past 6 months or so, brought in a handful of new people on your team.
Yep.
And one of the first things that you did as part of that is you really kind of put together a more of a formalized path or training plan for those team members. Talk to me a little bit about why you felt like that was needed, why you ever even started going down that path, and how it's worked out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, full transparency, I have good leadership around me. That really forced my hand a little bit, to be honest. We know we want to grow, and we just realized, at least in my department, that our success was mostly individual driven, and normally they're natural talents, right? So I can't play the ukulele, but I'm pretty decent at the selling thing. I enjoy asking questions, and so I've had success there. Other key individuals on our team have had success, but honestly, mostly because they're just naturally inclined to do those things. And they really get it. And so once they learned our culture, they were off and running and being successful. But I think part of this really stemmed from, we wanted to have a repeatable, consistent process that we put every single new person through. And once I realized that if I just created it once, I could go back and tweak it, but I would never have to do that again. I just saw a finish line and thought, this really would be worth it, because if we hire one person or we hire 50 people, I can scale this thing once kind of the building blocks are in place. And you and Matt and our team really encouraged me to think through that. So, what the process looks like as far as getting it going was really just that. What are the characteristics and the qualities we need in someone to demonstrate? What are the skills that we need them to have acquired by the end of our training plan? And then how can we, of course, go back and then inspect and expect what they're actually doing? So is the process repeatable? Are their actions demonstrating like success, or all of the things we needed them to do? So really, it was great. I got to sit down with Greg, our HR guy, and Director of People Services, and just said, here's what success would look like for me in this role at 90 days, and here's what it looks like in like 2 or 3 years. And basically, we just started with the vision of that specific role and said, this is what winning would look like in their role, and we would count on this person, that KRA language, we would count on that person to be doing these things and living out kind of these core values. And from there, once we painted that picture, it was a lot easier to then try to decide what are the fundamental disciplines, skills, soft skills, technical skills, and training that person would have to have acquired and developed to be that person. And so it was easy for me to work backwards once I had the vision of who I wanted that person to be. And then from there, it was just head down, get to work.
That's a long, arduous process.
Mm-hmm.
This is not something that you can just wake up next day and be like, oh, I'm going to do this today and be done. How granular did you get on the task level of, this is the things that I need to train these new hires on their job? Is it looking at what they should be doing on a daily basis, and this is how you do it? Is it more, I'll say, vision-based, where it's ultimately your goal is this, and so whatever it takes to get there? How detailed did you get in that?
Yeah, I started with the fundamentals that I needed them to have in place. As a salesperson, you have to understand that a part of your job is making calls every day and setting appointments and having conversations. It doesn't help me to lay out how awesome, how much money you could make, how many clients you could bring on, if they can't get to the very first step in that process. So I actually probably went backwards. I didn't care so much about coaching like the vision of who I wanted them to be, although I think that's important to do. Mm-hmm. I just felt they already have a picture of success. We have successful individuals that are walking and doing the things we want them to do. So that vision's already being cast for them by other team members that they're hired with. I think what I really focused on was the fundamentals that I needed each of them to have, and to really get that like deep and heavy into their brain. I always think of everything like in basketball terms, but when you first get started, depending on your role, like you've got to learn to dribble, and you've got to learn to put your like hand in the cookie basket, before you're ever the best 3-point shooter out there. And you've got to know how to do a solid pick before you can do a pick and roll. And so if you get the fundamentals right of learning how to run and how to jump and how to dribble and how to shoot, well, then the finesse of actually like being the type of player you want to be, that gets a lot easier. But if you don't have those fundamentals in place, you're not valuable to the team.
So from a training perspective, it wasn't enough to say you will need to make phone calls, just to use that as an example.
Yeah, absolutely.
Your training is, this is how you make phone calls. This is how many phone calls that you would normally expect to make in a given day or week or whatever. And this is kind of the, what happens after you do make that phone call. How do what's the follow-up plan with that? You're getting to that level for almost
Absolutely.
every task that they're going to be doing in their first, maybe 30, 60, 90 days.
Yeah, absolutely. We looked at what do they need to accomplish to be successful, and then how do they need to accomplish that. And so first start with the basics of what needs to be done every single day, day in and day out. What tasks do they need to perform to be successful in this role? And then once we laid that map out and clearly in a system, systematized, organized way, for us that's a playbook. Then it was, okay, now that I know what I'm supposed to be doing, now I need to know how to do that. And that's where you start layering in, depending on the role, your technical training. There's software that you've got to teach on. There's industry knowledge you need to teach on. But I think once you lay out the what, then it's, of course, some of your training has got to be very much, here's actually how I go about accomplishing that. And putting that, again, in the playbook for me was helpful because now I have a base for, hey, when we, keep an organized CRM, when we take notes, this is how we take notes. So now I've created some consistency for I'm putting in my notes and organizing the CRM the way I expect every single team member to follow. So they see the vision of what they're supposed to be doing, but there's also an actual document that gives them like a standard operating procedure for kind of every step that's important to us.
Then are you laying that training plan? Because this isn't just, hey, this is one course or, in our world, a course that you would take. Mm-hmm. This is multiple. So are you laying those courses, those plans on a calendar and saying, look, this is your first X number of days or weeks. This is exactly what it's going to look like.
Yeah, I think that's probably needs to get like tailorized and custom to the type of person and the type of role you're hiring for. For me, salespeople tend to be extroverted. They tend to be, they like being out and about and doing things. And I knew that, we've got some great tools in place. We've got a learning management system. So the idea of, hey, I can create a video, I can just jump on my Zoom, record my video, explain this. I can present, do a screen share. Now I've got a course that I want all people to go through. Like the idea of that was super exciting to know that we had that technology in place. But even with that, if I set a salesperson in front of a screen for 2 weeks, I can tell you what they would learn, and that's absolutely nothing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think that needs to be pretty dependent on the type of role you're hiring. For a super technically inclined person that's mastering a technical skill, in my mind, like an administrator or a very like tech-driven person that needs to know your systems or your processes, it may be absolutely perfect to put them in front of a screen for, their first 30 days and all they're learning is the how to and the ins and outs. But for my role specifically, really it was, I've got some video coursing that I want them to do, primarily because it takes time off of me. I can give all of them this training. It's systematized, but it's also consistent. I'm not saying one thing to one person and one thing to another. It's here's how we make phone calls and here's what we expect. So create that course. But then in our world, it was we're going to ask them to do a couple of online courses, but then we're also wanting them to check in with other salespeople, and we want them to go on sales calls and do things. So I tried to break up our training plan to be both a healthy mix of a couple of courses online every day, tagged with making sure they're getting out and about, moving, and trying to kind of implement the stuff that they're
You're wanting them to stay engaged. Otherwise, it's like, oh, yeah, I got to go watch more videos.
Right. And, a lot of, even now, I think our learning technologies are really awesome. But, I just think about, in college, how you learned as a student. You likely enjoyed the professors that were very engaged with you. At least that was my experience. I took virtual classes and I hated those classes and I learned nothing. But the ones that I had in-person instruction and that I was meeting with on a routine basis, I just took a lot out of that. And so I kind of assume that all employees getting started, you're going to have some courses. There's just a part of it that's boring and you need that stuff in place. But you also need a leader or a coach or a manager, supervisor who's going to be engaged with their day-to-day and making sure they're creating space in their calendar for check-ins to see, are they actually acquiring the knowledge you need for them to have? And I think more importantly, getting some feedback on how that plan it actually is. Now that we've had a couple staff go through it, it's, hey, what did you think about that actual training? Well, I've got great feedback now for, hey, this was really confusing, and so now I can tweak that course to make it a little bit better for the next teammate that goes through it.
Yeah. I think that one of the fears that I have with all the training stuff and remote workers is that we are pushing more of the training piece to online technology, virtual technology. The delivery of that is happening in recorded sessions versus anything live with humans. And I don't love that, because I don't think whenever we're dealing with people, we shouldn't be looking for the most efficient way to train our employees. We should be looking for the most effective way to train our employees, because at the end of the day, if we train our new hires well and they can get up and running quicker, or even they're more ready to go out and do the job that we hired them for, that's ultimately going to equate to success in the business overall, because our people drive everything. And if we just simply say, hey, you know what, we're going to put you behind a video screen, you don't really have a chance to ask questions to a live audience or anything like that, then they're going to regurgitate what they saw. And there also is a requirement of keeping up with that system on an ongoing basis.
Absolutely.
In our world, something can change at the drop of a hat. And if we're fully dependent upon video-based learning, we have to go re-record or edit videos that are all over the place. And it's not as, I personally, I don't think it's as effective as when we can get in person, side by side, or even in a group together. And if we're just relying on video-based technology, we're going to lose something there.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. But then, to the other side of that coin, I think there's a lot of growing small businesses out there who, I think, just and thinking about like my own experience, when I thought about what it would take as far as time wise for me to actually sit down, build this plan, put together the plan for, hey, their first 90 days, their first 6 months, their first year, that was so daunting. It was just easier to just not worry about it. And I think a lot of small businesses and their teams are in that same situation. I can't dedicate a whole month to getting this person's plan together. I'm generally writing the plan the day before they're in the office. Like, let's be honest. So I think even just the time suck of knowing it's there, it just can feel so daunting to most owners and to leaders. It's just like, oh my gosh, like, when am I going to have time to do this?
Yeah.
But I think, like, to the positive side of having some technology in place, if you can kind of get in that mindset of everything that I'm doing and teaching when I'm in front of my team could be an opportunity for me to create a course or to create a path. Once you get yourself in that mindset, now you've developed some pieces. Like, if just getting on a recording, you now have some pieces that you could put in a plan. Most of the trainings that we're doing in our sales meetings are all of the things I would want a new hire to have, like, in their toolkit in their first 90 days. So rather than me teaching it at the sales meeting and then reteaching it in 90 days and then reteaching it, well, I'll take the time to get it right the first time I train it. I'm going to record that. And now I do have at least a foundational building block that I can give to anyone. So I agree with you. I think that we definitely should balance the effectiveness of our training plans with the efficiency, but also too, I think as leaders, for it to not feel so daunting, I have all of this work to do, just getting in the habit of knowing when I want to transmit a skill to my team, I should be thinking about how can I record that for future. That will really help you in the long run develop a path for those key individuals.
Yeah. What Casey always says, she leads some of our operations teams. She really values the hear, see, do, and evaluate kind of mantra, where she will always, hey, I'm going to tell you, this is how we're going to do this. This is the way that we do whatever it is that she's talking about. And then it's going to be here. I'm going to show you how to do that. And then I'm going to watch you do it. And I'm going to give you some feedback on what you got right, what you got wrong, and how you need to tweak. You really kind of did that with the training plan stuff that you built out from the standpoint of you went through, right, here's how to make a phone call. But then next up was, hey, you're going to be listening to all the phone calls that the team is making. And then follow that with, I'm going to be listening to the phone calls that you're making and giving feedback all along the way. Yeah. That, to me, that breaks it up. So it's not just, I have everything to learn. And then once I've learned everything, and now I'm a master of all the things that you want me to learn, allegedly, because I watched some videos and took some tests.
Absolutely.
Now I got to go implement those things, and 80% of the stuff I just learned is out of my brain because it's just overwhelming.
Absolutely.
And from a new hire's perspective, they want to, I think, the people that we hire, generally speaking, they want to jump in and be as effective as possible as soon as possible. Mm-hmm. We don't hire people that are just wanting to get into the organization and slowly feel their way around and kind of find their niche. They're really wanting to jump in and make a splash. And so the training that's proactively thought about, organized, ready to roll out, it's waiting for them. They kind of have the ability to move at their pace to the extent they want to, but there's plenty of time for feedback. And here's what chances to actually go and do the things that we're going to need them to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which makes it, I think it's a little bit better. It's not as passive.
Definitely. You're a great organizer. To people out there that are listening that are thinking, okay, I'm going to commit some time to work on a training plan, maybe for a key staff or a key individual in our company. How would you advise or encourage a leader or an owner to start developing that path or, re-energizing one that they have in place already?
If you have nothing in place, I think you need to divide new hire training into two categories. There is an orientation that needs to happen.
Sure.
And then there's a training that needs to happen. The orientation is familiarity with your business. This is where you need to go through the mission, vision, values. Honestly, as boring as it is and painful as it is, even like I'm the one who recorded our video that we put out for this, but you need to spend some time going through the employee handbook and pointing out key policies, because your employees are going to want to know what's in it for me, and it's our responsibility as the employer to let them know that.
Sure.
And so there's the orientation piece. We're really talking about the company, and this is who to go to for what. You did a great job of putting together a glossary. These are all the terms that we use inside of our company that you probably aren't familiar with. It's just the jargon that we use. And so whenever you hear somebody talking and you hear that word, you have a resource. So I want to be able to do that piece. And that piece is largely recorded video stuff because it doesn't change super often. And when it does, there's typically one place to go to fix or correct. But then when you jump into the training piece, I think of it from the standpoint of first week, second week, 3 months, 6 months, like what's those milestones? Ultimately, we start with the end in mind. This is what a fully up and running person looks like, and these are the skill sets that they have, the things that they're knowledgeable about. And then just like you did, we're got to break that down into, in order to get to step 10, what is step 5, what is step 1?
Sure.
And that's where it gets hard, is because a lot of times we will assume as an employer that's hired a person that we think is going to be the magic pill that fixes all of our problems.
Which they do. People fix
people do.
and opportunities.
They do. But we assume they're going to do that on day one because they're super knowledgeable.
Sure.
And a lot of times they don't know which way is up on day one, and it's our job to tell them that. And so we do that through very basic training, ground level training.
Yeah.
In our interview process, we talk about this. We talk about this, if you're a staff accountant that's interviewing here, we're going to tell you, look, we know that you're knowledgeable. You've done assessments. You've passed assessments, which very few people pass. We know you're knowledgeable. We're not going to discount your knowledge, but we do need to kind of break some of that knowledge and build it back up our way, because we don't want you to do things the way that you've always done them.
Sure.
We want you to do things our way a little bit.
Sure.
And so we start very basic. And then from there, it's, in 2 weeks, this is the things I want you to know. And like we talked about, you need to break that up with, I'm going to do some training, and then I'm going to do some modeling, and then I'm going to do some coaching and development as you're doing those things.
Yeah.
And so find those little micro steps, that you can stair step somebody through. Quick wins are super, super helpful for new hires. They feel like they're really adding value quickly.
Yep.
And you cannot give too much feedback, consistently along the way. It takes a lot of time. I mean, it takes a lot of time. And most small businesses out there, I needed somebody yesterday anyway, and I need this person up and running as fast as possible. So here's the fire hose. Go get what you can get out of it, and then we'll figure out the rest.
Yeah.
We did that for the longest time, and still do that to this day in some areas.
Sure.
But we're trying to get away from that because honestly just doesn't work as well.
Yeah. I mean, to your point about like orientation, coaching your mission, vision, goals, your whys, and having a way, something that was very helpful for me that I'll continue doing just because I felt it helpful was, we've created that orientation plan for all new hires that lets them know who we are, what we do, why we do it, and then just kind of systems like stuff that you should expect around the office. I took that a step further and just put a binder with a couple of key things on each of their desks. Obviously everything can be virtual, but I like the old school having a book. And so something that I did was like, I set that on all of their desks, and in that book, outside of kind of their courses, were just like random assignments. Some of those were go listen to this podcast. Like we did a why the Patrick Accounting story exists. We interviewed Matt, and it's like, yeah, you're going to hear that on a video and you'll go to lunch with Matt, but that podcast is a perfect opportunity to hear in Matt's words why he started this company. And so I wanted to go a step further. And so like in that book, I had little assignments like read this blog, watch this podcast, like any, stuff that you think, oh, well, that's dumb or irrelevant. It taught them a couple things. It taught them about like our philosophy around how we educate. Taught them where to go find stuff, how to go find stuff. And then, I followed the see one, do one, teach one philosophy that you've talked quite a bit about. Even after that, like they had places to take notes. They had like impressions for the day. And they also had assignments, which probably bugs the heck out of our team, which is go book an appointment with Casey for 15 minutes. Go take this person to lunch. I wanted my team to get in the habit of knowing who to go to in the office outside of my department. Like I wanted them to create those cross-department relationships. That's a time suck on employees because it's like, I don't have 15 minutes to sit with this cat who doesn't even know what a payroll tax, what payroll taxes are. But I think even having just that as a reference point for them was super helpful. Org charts there, handbooks there.
You're setting expectations.
Yeah, that was super valuable. And, once I collected feedback, so their assignment every day was Slack me one thing that you learned that surprised you, one thing you learned you didn't like, and one thing you think we can do better as a company. And so they got in that rhythm of always sending me feedback at the end of their day. And honestly, their insights were surprising. No one in the company has a better idea about what the company is lacking in than your new hire because they're fresh from a different organization. And so when they told me, hey, this is confusing, that was a really good opportunity for me. I saw that across a couple of we hired, 2 guys, and both guys said, hey, this piece is confusing. Wonderful.
Yeah,
that was
gold.
Great insight for me then to go back and, okay, now I have an opportunity to clarify this for them, but I now have an opportunity to correct this moving forward. So just even that rhythm of, and it was simple. There's every day your assignment is to Slack me something insightful, something disappointed you, and something that, we could do better.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It was a big deal. And those books are great because every once in a while I think, hey, let me look at your book and see, just see what were their notes that they were taking back then.
Yeah.
So
that's
I think
really
it's
good.
important to have.
I think a couple of other things before we wrap up. I think it's important to understand that this whole process takes time. And when you think you've devoted too much time to it is when you're probably just getting started.
Yeah.
One of the biggest frustrations for me as a leader is hey, I feel like I told you that already. Why don't you know it? And it's because I told you that once and I expected it to be ingrained in your brain for all of forever. And the reality is until I've repeated myself a couple dozen times, they have no clue what I'm saying, especially a new hire that comes in with zero institutional knowledge. It is unfair for me to expect them to know what I'm talking about simply because I explained something one time about our company or what we do or how we do things. There's a repetition that for the leader can be frustrating because you feel like a broken record, but for that new hire, it is super valuable because they are just now starting to learn these words and what they actually mean. And so you have to devote a significant amount of time to it, but it's not like just an expense of time. It's not I'm just spending time here. It's an investment of time. Because even whenever you have those new hires that are doing those cross-departmental meetings, does it take 15, 30 minutes or an hour out of my day? Absolutely does. But that's exactly like it's one of my favorite parts of my job, but 2, that is investments. Because the things that person is going to learn during those sit downs, is going to be really important as they learn how to do their job better or quicker or whatever it is.
Yep.
And you have to be willing to spend the time.
Yeah.
And if you're not, you're going to flounder along. It's just another, hey, you know what? Let's train on this today because it sounds good.
Yeah. And to your point, we have a professional coach that's told us a couple times, it takes 7 times for you to say something before someone hears it for the first time. Mm-hmm. And I've kept that in the back of my head a lot at every single sales meeting, anytime I'm interfacing with a team. There's really 5 disciplines I want them to just know by heart. And so I'm going to keep repeating those things. To your point, it's very frustrating.
Yeah,
because it's oh, here we go again. And I know they think I'm crazy, which is fine. They can think I'm crazy. I want to be committed to a vision, and I want them to see, okay, if they can say anything about my leader, it's she really does care about these 5 things. And so
these 5 things are really important.
These 5 things, if you can do this, you will be successful. But I do think I keep that in the back of my head 7 times. So for your new hires, your vision, your mission, your why, and what success looks like in their role. Just keep repeating that every single day.
Yeah, and that brings me to the last thing, and that is, you will never, ever, ever build out training plans for everything that you actually need to train on. Yeah. This is an ongoing, living, breathing process. Mm-hmm. You never get to a finish line. And part of that's frustrating because I like to check the box, say it's done, and move on. Part of it is encouraging because I don't feel like a failure because I don't have everything built out. Mm-hmm. And that is why it is so, so very important to start with the vision, values of the organization. What I always tell our team is whenever you don't know how to make a decision or do something, always reflect back on our values. And based on our values, what would you tell yourself is the right thing to do here? Yep. And if you act in that spirit, you're never going to be wrong.
Yep.
If you're doing something that is really providing empathy for our clients and servicing them well, and it was out of scope or out of the box or whatever, then we'll come alongside you, pat you on the back, say, hey, I appreciate that you did that, and maybe here's how to do it next time.
Yeah.
But it's never oh, you did that wrong, you made the bad decision, because they're operating within the framework of our values.
Absolutely.
Which is why we always start there, we end there, and it's everywhere in the middle, because it's impossible to tell every person how to do whatever it is they're going to do every single time.
Yeah.
We live in a professional services world where there's ever-changing landscape. Things are different every
day.
month. Every day sometimes. And they have to be able to think on their feet.
Definitely.
So super important to get right. So if you're listening, here's the thing. I want you to think about the last time that you actually looked at your new hire training plans, your training paths, whatever that looks like, whether that's documented in some kind of sophisticated, formalized electronic learning management system, or if it's simply a sheet of paper that you wrote 20 years ago and is passing down from new hire to new hire, whatever that looks like. Think through the last time you really looked at that and how detailed is it? What do you need to change about that plan to make it accurate, to really set your new hires up for success as early as they possibly can? And if you do that, what you'll find is there's going to be some holes. Some of you guys probably have this stuff down super, super great. Others of you probably have never created any type of new hire training path. Either way, there's room to tweak it. So go take a look at that stuff, see where you can find some room for improvement, and get to work on it. And if you need any help with it, you can always reach us at onestepbetter@whirks.com, and we'd be glad to help.
Yeah. We have created an onboarding plan that stems from the first to second week in 90 days. So if you need a template to get started, onestepbetter@whirks.com, we might pass it along.
Excellent. Thanks, everybody. Y'all have a great day. Thanks for listening to the One Step Better podcast. I'd really appreciate it if you would take some time to rate us 5 stars on your podcast player of choice and make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you never miss out on another episode. Thanks and have a great day.